I was sitting at a bar in Tokyo. I was on business. And someone who worked for me in London calls me and says, Kevin, disaster. I just found out that this wasn't a Brightflag again. All of our customer success managers are talking to one another about how much we're paying them. What should I do? And I said, what do you? What? I didn't know where to start. I was like, what should you do? Nothing. There's nothing to do. Why are you surprised? Like, why are you just discovering that people talk about how much they're paid? I think pay transparency is a great thing for a variety of reasons, including that it helps to eliminate or at least reduce bias.
Yes.
But also, and I mean this with all due respect, just so it cuts down the amount of time that is wasted wondering, right? So this is how much that role is paying. This is how much that person is being paid. And now you can get the head trash out and go on with, improving in the ways that you want to improve so that you can grow your earnings. So that's a big part of the reason that I'm so passionate about doing this survey every year is to empower people to be compensated in a fair way, but also to empower them to leave the head trash behind.
What does 2025 hold for legal tech? How about the legal ops profession? Today, we are joined on the abstract by two of my friends, two community builders, for a slightly different episode. I'm joined by Matt Wheatley, Kevin Cohn. If you don't know them, Kevin is the Chief Customer Officer for Brightflag. And I'm going to read my summary of what you guys do, but you are welcome to
do it.
Brightflag is an intuitive AI-powered e-billing and matter management solution that provides your team with complete visibility into legal work and spend. Matt is the VP of Client Strategy at Priori, a global talent marketplace that's connecting organizations with the right talent for their legal work.
Nailed it.
How'd I do?
Yeah, I mean, your words sound suspiciously like our words. So
Did you take that
from
from
your
our
websites? I might have.
Crazy. Digital native over here.
This is going to be a little different. We're going to have a conversation about trends that we're seeing, opinions that we have, things that we're looking forward to. And I always want feedback on these episodes, but I will also say, honestly, please give me feedback on this, because if you like this, I will do more like this with other cool people like Kevin and Matt.
Does that exist?
It's a pretty high bar.
I might have to go outside the New York City metropolitan area to find them.
LA.
All right, let's get started. Okay, Kevin, you just got back, world traveler, from Brightflag's Customer Advisory Board meeting and yearly kickoff in Ireland. How did that go? How did that set the tone for the year? How do you feel about 2025?
So, I got the flu.
Ooh.
So,
Good, by the way.
That's true.
After
Thank
having
you.
the flu.
It's all the makeup that you gave me right before we started off. No, so I travel a ton. Last year, 2024, I traveled all but 8 weeks of the year.
Wow.
I think. So it was very intense. It was rough, but a great way to kick off the year. So every year we bring the entire company to Dublin, and this was the first year that I also brought the entire customer advisory board. So we've got a great customer advisory board with a lot of people who give us incredible insight and also challenge us in the best possible ways. But the actual customer advisory board meeting was the very last day of what ended up being an 11-day trip.
Whoa.
Normally, I travel a lot, but normally it's for 1 day, 2 days, maybe 5 days, 11 days. And it was after 3 weeks of not having traveled, the only time in 2024 when I went 3 weeks without traveling, and I was dragging. But I rallied, and it's great to be in a room with all of these customers, legal operations leaders, getting this kind of feedback, and also coming off of the year that we had. 2024 was by far our biggest and best year. And so we had the entire company there, the entire cab there, everybody learning a lot from it. It was fantastic, and it didn't rain. And if you've ever spent 5 days in Dublin in January without getting rained on, you are winning. So
luck of the Irish, one might say.
Well, I didn't leave feeling that lucky because I brought the sick back with me. But no, it was a great way to kick off the year.
Do you all have a customer advisory board?
We do. It's phenomenal.
Do you bring them together? I'll use this as a little bit of research for myself. We have an advisory board, which I view as a different thing than a customer advisory board. Do you feel like that's a useful group for your business?
Yeah. It's extremely helpful to get people who are using your product together in a place where they feel like they can be maybe a little more critical than they might be able to in just a one-to-one customer interaction. So because you're there to get their feedback, and I think it makes people feel like they're more part of the brand. So you strengthen your relationships with them, with people in their network. So it's been having a customer advisory board has been a really core part of our go-to-market strategy for the past couple of years.
I think there's something to be said also for getting folks in the same room. Like when I was standing up our advisory board with other people in the business, I didn't do it all by myself, but it was, we're going to bring this group together once a quarter and have them meet and have them talk to each other. I think people feel a little bit more free, like you're saying, to share things that maybe are a little bit critical about the product or what your strategy looks like and the roadmap looks like when they're all in the room together and sort of feeding off of each other, as opposed to one person talking to the chief product officer or one person talking to the CEO.
And I think there's also that, but also like people want to meet each other in these settings too. Like it's partly about Brightflag or Priori, but I think that there's a lot of conferences. A lot of them are huge, like thousands of people, and people who are in similar positions. It's hard to have kind of little pods where they can network. I don't know if you've seen that with your advisory board. They like to spend time with each other in smaller groups.
Yeah, I think also, so the way that I structured it is there are 10 members and it's a 12-month term, so it runs July through June.
Nice. That's pretty short, actually.
Yeah, and that gives us an opportunity to get different perspectives, but it also gives the customers an opportunity to say, hey, I'm entering a really, really busy period. I got to peel off, or they might change jobs and they're no longer a customer, or they're moving to a new customer organization. But it meets once a quarter, and one of those 4 times a year we do it in person. And what I have felt from the very first time that we did it was a sense of ownership and being on the journey that I feel from customers pretty regularly, but not to this degree. And on this day in particular, so it was this past Friday, there were conversations about what Brightflag can do to put itself in an even stronger competitive position. And normally when you're having a conversation with customers, they're actually coming at it from the perspective of what can you do to put me in a better position, which is what I want to focus on, is how to make them more successful. But it crossed into a different kind of ownership in this setting, which was rewarding for me. I think it was rewarding for them. I'm sure it was, because they all emailed me afterwards. So, yeah, strongly. I mean, if you don't have a customer advisory board, I think that you're missing out because there's so many benefits from it.
It's on our roadmap. Maybe even doubly so now. Yeah, I'm committing to it publicly now.
I would definitely recommend it. I'm curious, when you think about like content and programming for your advisory board meeting, one of the things we think about is how can we make this broadly interesting for them and not just purely about Priori or Brightflag. Was it all Brightflag content all day?
Jeez, you're going to make me give up all the secrets now.
That's why you're on record here.
So we start off the same way every time. First of all, I said there are 10 customer members, but then there are 4 Brightflag members. So I'm the permanent member, and then there are 3 rotating members, and that gives me an opportunity to expose other people on the team to that kind of a setting, and to expose the customers to other people on our team. So the first few minutes are spent with introductions and maybe an icebreaker. Then I give an update on what's happened with Brightflag. This is a safe space where I can say, this is how we grew. These are some of the customers that we added. These are some of the people that we added to the team. And then we have one or two focus topics for the meeting. It depends on how long the meeting was. Because it was the start of the year and we had more time, we did a deep dive on our product roadmap for 2025. And one of my learnings from that is I probably should have shared a little information ahead of time so that the conversation could have been even more productive. It was a great conversation, but it's a lot to take in. Yeah. And of course, I'm there heaving and trying to be heard. During our kickoff a few days earlier, I actually had to use a microphone, which, I mean,
wow,
you guys know me. Like my voice, my voice carries, and I don't like using a microphone. But I get up there and I'm like, "Hi, I'm going to use a microphone this time because you're not going to hear me otherwise." So I did a deep dive on the product roadmap, and then I had a few members of our product team join for about an hour, and they did a discovery workshop on a major new feature that we're developing in the first quarter of this year. And so that's sort of how I try to do it. So I start off all of these meetings by saying, this is an extremely selfish thing for us. Like, we're getting the value out of this, and I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your contributions, and I hope that I end up being wrong, and you actually also get value out of it too. But just in case you don't, thank you in advance. And they've all been thrilled to do it. And then they do come back and say, look, it's the connections that we get that are very valuable, but also in the course of talking about this feature, for example, they were all able to give input, but they also said, wow, listening to, this person and that person, I didn't realize that we could approach the problem this way. And so I think they're getting quite a bit out of it as well.
I think more people in the legal community, legal ops and GCs, in-house lawyers, want to or are interested in product development than we might expect. I think that it is easy to say, oh, no, they're just interested in the outcomes. But I actually think that a lot of them almost wish they had a way to kind of like dig deeper or scratch that itch or get themselves more involved. It's 'cause they just don't always know how to do so, right? You got to give them the outlet or design the outlet for them.
Yeah, because they're smart people who are curious about a lot of different things who just happen to decide to go to law school. Like, too many smart people decide to go to law school, and their talents are kind of wasted, I think,
But, I mean, like, present company excluded.
I'm probably a pretty good example given that I went to law school and I'm no longer practicing. But, I think that, like, lawyers are really, really smart in a lot of different ways, and legal operations professionals, and they have a lot to add when it comes to things like product design.
Okay, switching gears. You mentioned conferences, Matt. Events you're excited for this year, events that you are dreading that you're going to have to attend. Maybe Tyler. For Kevin, that's based on the length of the flight, 16-plus hour flights.
Yes, looking forward to a lot of events. I don't travel as much as Kevin, but I'm on the road at least once a month. Looking forward to any events that can bring together. I care a lot about legal operations professionals, and I care a lot about in-house lawyers. And anything that brings those two groups together is something I would be particularly excited about. And I think the conference that has done a good job with that in particular is Running Legal Like a Business.
I haven't been to that one before. It's good?
It's good, yeah. It's big, but not too big. They are trying to bring in-house counsel, to bring in just different voices. So I'm looking forward to that one, but I'm looking forward to smaller events, customer on-site visits. It's really good to go to 2,000, 3,000 person conferences, but I like the smaller events the more that I go to conferences. What about you, Kevin?
I think there are too many because people don't have budget to go to anywhere near as many. Like the market demands cannot support Clock, ACC, Running Legal Like a Business, Legal Operators, Consero, and just too many.
ACC.
So I think the L Suite and Link coming together, for example, good thing for a number of reasons. One of them being that there's a little consolidation in my mind, right? But people end up having to choose between, do I go to Clock because that's where I know I'll see the most people and also have a good time probably. But maybe I won't learn quite as much versus do I go to something that's more focused, whether it's a legalops.com regional event or something else like SpotDraft's upcoming summit, and the learning might be deeper, but the network building might not be as big. But there's also a bit of a false choice there because I don't know a lot of people who go to Clock who aren't very early in their career and come out and be like, I met a lot of new people who are actually going to really help me. It's usually like there were a lot of people, I had a good time, there was a party. So I think that's part of the reason that Clock is maybe it doesn't have quite the hold that it used to. Yeah.
I feel like Clock for a lot of people, and I've only been to 2 or 3 Clocks myself, but I have this experience from my prior sort of life working in privacy, which is the first time you go to this IAPP conference, it's fantastic, and you're learning and you're meeting all these people, and you get to meet all the other customers and clients of your law firm that you've never met before. And then by the 5th one, it's like, okay, well, there's like another session over there, and that's great. And like, I'm sure it's an interesting conversation on stage, but the real conversation is happening outside the Starbucks across the street, where all the people who've been around for many years are talking and sharing and learning from each other, as opposed to learning from the keynotes or the panels or what have you.
Yeah, it's back to like the smaller groups, customer advisory boards, groups like TechGC that are a little more tight knit. I think there's a lot of value in that. I mean, everybody goes to Clock, so that's you're getting that same crossover. But I think a lot of the more senior people are going and probably not going to many of the sessions. They're just there to hang out with each other, and I don't even know how much business is being talked about a lot of the time. It's just to see people that you like and that you've gotten to know over the years.
You mentioned the Link acquisition.
Yep.
I'm very excited about that, and I will say I'm biased because I worked with Kieran and Greg on TechGC before they rebranded it as the L Suite, and so I have a little bit of a stake in that. I will say that, but I'm very excited about it because I want to see legal ops in conversation with GCs and in-house counsel more. I think that sometimes the two groups talk past each other, or they don't quite know how to talk to each other, and that's natural, right? I think that the training that lawyers get is very different than the way that lots of legal ops professionals' careers evolve. But I'm looking forward to there being an established place where one of the primary goals is facilitating that sort of conversation. For sure.
I mean, I think that it's good for that. It's good for job opportunities, growth opportunities. I mean,
That's true.
So I've looked at the Fortune 1000 to see how many of them have legal operations functions. It's about half, a little less than half actually. I bet if you looked at unicorn tech companies, high growth startups, even fewer of them actually have a dedicated legal operations titled person. And I think there's probably a lot of opportunity for like a small legal department that's got a lot of chaos to hire a legal ops person. So I think it's a good growth space too. To unlock new job opportunities in a kind of a tough market for legal ops professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Anytime that you have opposites, right, they can attract, but also they can very easily misunderstand one another and repel. And one of the dynamics that I think the legal ops labor market is still in the process of working through is what is legal ops really? Like, what is the terminal state going to be? Is it going to be this extremely strategic right hand to the CLO GC at one extreme? Is it going to be the e-billing or CLM admin, at the other extreme? Or is it going to be a mix? Or is there going to be a diversity? Right? So not it's doing a little of this and it's doing a little of that, but some people are here, some people are here, some people are somewhere else. And by having what has been the case up until legalops.com really started to take off about 2 years ago and until the L Suite acquired Link, is that you had them on parallel tracks, like never the two shall meet. Even ACC, which has historically been about the law practicing members of the team, created this other event, ACC Legal Ops Con, and I don't think that it was intentional to sort of like keep them separate, but that's what ends up happening a lot of the time. And so that's not helping the industry as a whole to get to a point of resolution around how do these personas better communicate, better strategize, better execute, and ultimately deliver better results. So I think it's a great thing that L Suite acquired Link. I think what Connie and Jeff are doing at legalops.com is also great. We need more of that.
What do you think Legal Ops is right now? So we talking about like what the terminus is, like what. There's a lot of debate. Like, is it like the things that you mentioned? But
let me put like a finer point on that question. And I think there's some like honest intellectual disagreement about this, and then I think there's some people who have like very, very strong, deeply held opinions about this, which they've been doing this a lot longer than I have, so that's okay. But is legal ops supposed to be a right hand to a GC or a CLO and be deeply integrated into the legal function? Is one sort of view of a paragon of legal ops. I think another view is we should be a big part of operations for the business broadly, and our path should run potentially through RevOps or sales ops or general sort of operations function in the business. And the work that we do is less intrinsically tied to the way that lawyers think or the way that lawyers work together or the way that a legal team runs, as opposed to the efficiencies and the process improvements that we drive. I think there's big disagreement about where the legal ops space should be running. Do you agree with my framing, I guess, first of all?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you say is there are kind of two dimensions on which to think about this. One dimension is, and this is an oversimplification, but strategic and tactical.
Yep.
And the other dimension is legal specific or more sort of general business operations, cross-functional. And I think that it's helpful to think about where you are and where you might want to be on those two dimensions. But I think it would be a mistake to conclude that legal ops will end up being a single point on that chart, right? So thinking about revenue operations, which has existed for quite a bit longer than legal ops, is in the Radford Guide. There are pay bands. There are many more people in the world doing RevOps jobs than legal ops jobs because it got started so much earlier. You can find people just as passionate as the people that we know who are very passionate about legal ops saying this is extremely strategic. It reports directly to the chief revenue officer. It's not a Salesforce administrator role. But you can also find people who are thrilled to have just gotten their first Salesforce administrator role.
Totally.
Right? And that's okay.
Yep.
And similarly, if you grabbed, 10 heads of revenue at, let's just say, at tech companies, because that's where you tend to find RevOps more often than not, you would probably get 5 of them saying sales ops is different than marketing ops is different than CS ops. And you would get the other 5 saying it's all revenue. Why are you trying to draw these artificial distinctions? And so what I try to say to people when I have this conversation about legal ops is we don't have to choose.
Right.
We don't have to aim it in one direction, but we do need to get better at defining what we mean whenever we use the term legal ops in any particular context, right? So there isn't one definition for it, but there is a definition for it in this circumstance and in that circumstance, and so on.
So you do think that it's important to define it in a way, because what I heard, and I agree with you, is even RevOps has been around for a long time. It's different depending on the organization, and it is to that organization what it needs to be for that organization. And we're humans, so we're gonna debate these things and fight about them. But does it actually matter? Does it need to be defined, or is it okay that legal ops at this company is going to be what it needs to be for that legal department because of how they work, and it's going to be different at another organization, and the right talent for that particular role is going to end up in that position?
I think it needs to be better defined than it is now for two primary reasons. The first is legal ops is not yet the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Clock, it feels like it's the norm,
Yep.
but you have to remember that you're at the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium annual meeting, right? So you're surrounded by it. But my favorite legal ops person to meet is the person who works in a legal ops role somewhere in the middle of the country, like outside of the major cities, outside of the major legal ops hotspots, at a company that I've never heard of before that's doing $5.5 billion a year in revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to understand what that person thinks legal ops is, what their GC thinks legal ops is, because that is ultimately the future, is like what mainstream business thinks of it as being. And not having it better defined makes it difficult to get to that point, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
The other way in which it impacts negatively is compensation. Because if the title legal operations manager can mean anything and everything, if it could mean anything from your entire job is to administer, Brightflag or SpotDraft or something like that, all the way to you are the strategic right hand to the CLO and you're planning the OKRs for the entire department and you're managing the budget for the entire department and you're deciding what the promotion paths are for the senior attorneys, like that person is not, those two people are not going to be paid the same.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, that is the main way that their compensation is assessed. And that's broken.
I think to expand on that too, I like the idea that we don't have to pick whether or not this leads people in a more general ops direction or it leads them in a legal specific and right hand to the CLO direction. I think that people should feel free to have either of those career paths open to them too, right? So saying there is something unique maybe about legal ops that means that there should be an operations function within a legal department where the people who staff it want to work with lawyers as opposed to with people generally across the business, and that's maybe required or important for success, does not preclude people on that team or in that function from saying, but ultimately I would love to be the COO of a business, or ultimately my career should lead in an operations direction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm testing that hypothesis with you, the two of you.
I agree. I don't know enough about what general operations hiring processes would look like. Is a director or VP of legal ops going to be considered for a COO position at a Fortune 1000 company? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that legal is, whether it is or isn't, lawyers think that it is extremely unique, and I assume it is. I mean, just thinking about relationships with law firms and the types of technology that lawyers are willing to use, and the fact that there is a legal specific billing invoice software. Very good, Brightflag. I think that there's going to always be, at some organizations, a distinct legal operations function because that's what legal wants. That's what some legal departments want.
So I'm smiling because one of our customers, this is a really, really large technology company. It's not a unicorn upstart. It's like they've got ads all over every airport kind of company. And about 8 months ago, the CEO of the company made a decision to consolidate every ops team, sales ops, fin ops, legal ops, under a single organizational umbrella, rolling up to the global chief operating officer, I think. And so I remember the head of legal ops of this company, and I'm good friends with them, said, well, this is what's happening. I don't really understand why it's being done, but it's happening. And I thought, okay, well, we're hearing about things like this. Let's see how it goes. And I caught up with them just a few weeks ago, and I said, so what's changed? They said, nothing. I have a different manager, but everything I do is legal. I put together my OKRs for the quarter, and I sort of brought them to my new manager, and the manager says, well, that's good, but you have to align them with the broader ops goals for the organization. And he's like, but I'm still only supporting the legal team? Yeah. So Like, and my title is still legal operations. Yeah. So
This reminds me a little bit, and we're not going to talk about this because we don't have enough time. This reminds me a little bit of the conversation that I think that all of us contributed to 6 months ago about should the GC report to the CEO or the CFO or right. I mean, that's sort of the same.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of the same thing, right? It's the equivalent, right?
Yes.
Which is to say, maybe, or maybe not, or maybe, right?
Would legal ops people want to be the legal ops profession? Would they want to be absorbed into operations more generally? Is that an attractive thing? Because I see it framed like it's kind of the next.
So like again, like when you say legal ops people. The typical there are about 10,000 legal operations professionals, and the way I'm defining that is they have legal operations or legal transformation or legal technology in their title, and they're working in-house, right? About 10,000 in the world. The overwhelming majority of them started their careers as paralegals or legal administrators. All right? And there's nothing wrong with that at all, and the sooner that we all recognize that is the future legal operations workforce, the more successful we'll all be because we'll be building tools for them, educational content to make them successful, etc. But those people, not meant to be pejorative, they chose to be paralegals. They chose to be legal admins. They enjoy legal, right? So that doesn't mean that they don't want to go and do other things, and more power to them if they do, but also more power to them if they don't.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, going back to definitions. If you just say, well, anything could be legal operations, then you get a lot of this slop, I think.
Yeah. I think there is kind of a silent but probably big group of people in legal operations at like varying levels who actually don't care about any of these things either. Who are just like,
how can you make my job easier?
Yeah, I make a good living. I like the people I work with. Sure, some of my work happens to be doing things that the lawyers don't want to do, but I'm good with it. And they're not like grappling with these kind of questions that the three of us live with on a day-to-day basis because this is like our livelihoods.
Yeah. And as it relates to comp, I think you're right that a lot of people, in fact, I know you're right, that most people are actually very happy with their job, with what they're earning. Like, it allows them to support their families, and that's the most important thing. We just launched the 2025 Legal Ops Compensation Survey a week and a half ago, and so we're in the middle of the drive to get people to participate. And I understand that that's we're in a very privileged position to be giving people the opportunity to voluntarily share this sensitive information. So we take it very seriously. And I do some like personal outreach to get those early participants going, and they're the ones who tend to promote it on social media and drives a lot of responses. And so I texted someone. I've known this person for a long time. They've been working in legal operations for a very long time. And I said, have you participated yet? And they said, no. At my new job, my comp sucks, so I wasn't going to. And I'm like, well, I
need that.
I'm not sure what problem we're solving here, and I'm sure when you look at your paycheck, you realize that this is what the market has determined the function is worth right now. Like, that's the purpose of the survey. So there is a lot of noise on LinkedIn, and I contribute to some of it unintentionally.
Your stuff's good.
But thanks.
I like your pay transparency. If people don't know about this.
Pay transparency hard.
Yeah. It's I remember a moment much earlier in my career, way before I was at Brightflag and in legal. I was sitting at a bar in Tokyo. I was on business, and someone who worked for me in London calls me and says, Kevin, disaster. I just found out that this wasn't a Brightflag again. All of our customer success managers are talking to one another about how much we're paying them. What should I do? And I said, what do you, what? I didn't know where to start. I was like, what should you do? Nothing. There's nothing to do. Why are you surprised? Like, why are you just discovering that people talk about how much they're paid? I think pay transparency is a great thing for a variety of reasons, including that it helps to eliminate or at least reduce bias.
Yes.
But also, and I mean this with all due respect, just so it cuts down the amount of time that is wasted wondering, right? So this is how much that role is paying. This is how much that person is being paid. And now you can get the head trash out and go on with, improving in the ways that you want to improve so that you can grow your earnings. So that's a big part of the reason that I'm so passionate about doing this survey every year, is to empower people to be compensated in a fair way, but also to empower them to leave the head trash behind.
Totally.
Right? Like, the number is what the number is. If you want to change it, go and do things to change it. But please don't say, I don't know. Right? Like, leave that behind.
Was there anything surprising in last year's data? And do you have any predictions for this year's?
So the most surprising thing in last year's data was that the gender pay gap grew, which was really disappointing. So we had a year in which it was closing, and closing in a really compelling way, I would say, especially with senior positions. It had closed quite a bit. And then last year, it's like it rubber banded back, and it got worse. So that was the most surprising thing. What I'm seeing in the early data so far, and if you haven't participated yet, I think by the time this airs, the survey is still going to be open. So you can go to brightflag.com/theabstract, and it will redirect you to the survey.
It will be open. I know when this is going to be
released.
It will be
open. Yeah, so brightflag.com/theabstract, and you can participate in the survey. What I'm seeing and we've already got hundreds of responses, is the leveling. It's confirming that on average the leveling has come down, right? So when we first started to do this, it was the high point of 2021, 2022. The money was flowing. Everyone was hiring the senior VP of legal operations. And it's just a statement of fact that those VP roles have become director roles. A lot of the director roles have become manager roles, and some of the manager roles have been eliminated, And so still seeing that pattern in the early response this year.
You already have that URL set up, the abstract?
I will by the time
Jeff Soriano, man.
He's got a week and a half or 2 weeks.
He's their marketing guy.
Hey, where did you get that haircut?
Down in Soho.
Jeff didn't.
I knew I had to
didn't cut your hair.
Had to get a fresh fade.
We do a comp survey, and legal ops people were able to contribute, but it was more focused on in-house counsel. And I'm curious what you saw. You reminded me of our sort of analysis of the gender pay gap in that. And one of the things that I thought was interesting there, I don't have a good answer for why this is the case. Corporate counsel, AGC level, pretty distinct gender pay gap.
Yep.
Even at the GC level, a little bit less so. Chief legal officer, no, actually. And now, we did look and we wanted to make sure there's actually a statistically significant sample size for each of these, right? I wasn't the one who did that, but I was assured by the people who did that, it wasn't like 5 CLOs responded, right? There probably is I don't know. What CLO means is a little bit different than what corporate counsel means. Corporate counsel is probably more consistent, but I thought that was interesting that sort of like at the would be the equivalent to the manager and director level that you're talking about. Pretty significant gap, but at the C-suite level, not quite so much.
Yeah, I don't have any theories on why that could be. I wonder, at public companies, those salaries are presumably reported at a C. Hopefully that's not enough to enforce people paying the genders equally, but maybe there's something there. I don't know. Do you have
you also figure, I guess, this is total conjecture, someone who's able to negotiate for a chief legal officer title probably has a lot more negotiating power, generally speaking. But these things are kind of pernicious. So
There's usually a search firm involved at the CLO level. There's a third party there to advise on, any good retained search firm is going to have a lot of data about what a position is worth. I don't know. I to your point about the importance of this data, it ultimately contributes to fairness and ideally higher salaries. I bet there's findings on this, and so if you're working with a good search firm, they're going to have some good comp data to maybe help with that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about taking a step out from legal, but thinking about comp more generally.
Mm-hmm.
So in the venture-backed in the venture-backed software company space,
He's recovering from the flu.
Yeah. Wait. I didn't say recovering.
Using the same microphone.
In the venture-backed software space, there are tons of comp benchmarks,
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever look at the interquartile range, so how much variability is there between the 25th percentile and the 75th percentile, you could drive a semi through it.
Sure.
There isn't as much consistency in compensation in, sales and go-to-market roles, or in CFO roles, or in CTO roles, as you would think. We're generally, I would say, in the sort of office, in the knowledge worker labor market, we're at a point in time where the compensation is kind of all over the place. Probably not to the extreme that it is in many legal operations roles, but especially in the U.S., I would say we are not paragons of pay consistency.
Sure.
Two paragons in one podcast. Wow.
Are you taking notes over there?
I'm listening intently. Hey, can I take us back to something a little controversial? I know we're
Please.
maybe a little bit. I wanted to ask about this this JD and legal ops thing. If does anybody want to, we've got room for nuance in this discussion. Any thoughts?
I mean, well, I don't have a law degree, although I think I don't correct people all the time when they assume that I do. And I spent a number of years reporting to GCs, working for GCs, doing privacy work, compliance work around data. Look, I think that you can find very talented people who can do a lot of the same work that lawyers can do within a business, who may be able to flex themselves to do things that people with many years of law school plus being an associate at a firm for a while may not be comfortable doing. But I think that different organizations need to decide what do they want to hire for what position. What sort of culture are they trying to build? What sort of skill set do they want? What sort of risk appetite do they want? Do they want to hire someone who's going to really lean into technology and opportunity, or do they want someone who's going to come in and establish super clear processes that no one ought to violate? So it frustrates me a little bit when I see companies who say, we're hiring for this legal ops position or this privacy program manager position, and we want a law degree, and we think that that's a prerequisite. But I also think maybe the organization's signaling something about what they value, and maybe someone who has a better bedside manner with the business isn't the right fit for that company or for that role or for the person who's running the team.
Hit us, Kevin.
Disagree.
He leaned
So
in.
no. I don't disagree. First of all, I think that this entire debate is overdone. About 9% of legal ops postings require a JD.
Hitting us with the data.
This is not.
We needed the data.
This is not a broad-based issue.
Yeah.
It's just a very emotional issue. Not only for people who don't have a JD, but mostly for people who don't have a JD, of which I am one. I don't have one. So first of all, less than 10%, right? Second of all, I think people immediately jump for that 9% to ascribe motive they think less of the people who don't have the JD, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's actually going on most of the time is laziness in writing the job description. It's not that someone sat down and said, I think that anyone who is going to be in a legal ops position needs to have a JD, and anyone who doesn't have a JD is lesser.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the people writing the job descriptions are lazy or sloppy. And I'll give you an example. This is my honest opinion, and I'll give you an example. So we have, Google alerts set up for Brightflag. We want to know when stuff shows up on the internet. And got this notification. This was over a year ago. One of the largest insurers in the country has posted a job description for a director of legal operations. And I'm thinking, why did Brightflag show up in this job description? I'm reading through it, and it says, preferred if the candidate has experience using Brightflag. And I was expecting it to say preferred if the candidate has experience using Brightflag or this other system or this other system. But no, it just said Brightflag.
Yeah.
And they're not a customer.
Interesting.
And they're not going to be a customer anytime
And
soon.
dollar signs are appearing
this is just
in Kevin's mind.
And so I'm thinking to myself, like, what am I
He
missing?
sent that to sales.
What am I missing here?
Yeah.
Because I could send it to the sales team and say, hey, maybe they're working with a partner that's advising them to switch to Brightflag, or maybe they just hired someone who was previously a customer. But I'm thinking, but it seems weird. It seems very unusual. And I sent it to someone else on the team, and this person is like Sherlock Holmes. And 5 minutes later, they write back and say, the entire job description was a copy and paste job from our other customer over here who's really small. So it's like this large insurer with a 2,000 person legal department copied and pasted from start to bottom the job posting that this actual customer had for a 20-person legal team, right?
Yeah.
If that happens for, one of the largest insurers in the country,
Sure.
I guarantee you there's a lot of sloppiness for the other 99.9% of postings. So I just think that the temperature has to be lowered here. There are just precious few people who are not getting a job they want because they don't have a JD. It's just not the primary thing. Right now, I'll tell you one of the primary things is if you got a legal ops job in 2021 or 2022, when not just in legal, but everywhere, salaries were seriously inflated, and now the labor market has adjusted, and you're still anchored up here, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? But the trouble is between the ears and behind the eyes. Right? You gotta catch back up to where the labor market is. And I think that time, I have come to look back on that time where there was this, it appeared to be permanent explosion in legal ops, but I think we now know that it was a flash in the pan. That was, on balance, not a positive for the industry, I think.
Let's talk about hiring. Do you have a reaction to that?
No, I think that was fantastic.
You're just glad that I said it.
Yeah, I didn't want to answer the question. I just wanted you all to talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about hiring a little bit. What are you seeing in the market beyond maybe a misalignment between the expectations that people have and the opportunities that may be out there? Do we think that the market is picking up at all? I mean, so I have a stronger perspective, I would say, on the in-house counsel market than I do on the legal ops market. I think that there are some signs of life that weren't there a year ago that are there now. I also think that the more senior that you get, the longer that you are unfortunately are going to be on the bench. You write about this a bit, Matt, on LinkedIn. I think that if you're looking for a director level role, and especially if you're looking for a GC or CLO role, you're probably going to be looking for 6 months at least, if not 12 or 18.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like you need to be thinking not just about how am I networking, but maybe you should pick up a couple of clients on the side, not only for the income, but so that way you have really interesting, relevant new things to talk about in interviews. So that way you're still sort of intellectually sharp, right?
Yeah.
Curious what both of you are seeing.
Yeah, how did you describe it? Sluggish, but maybe starting to show signs?
Yeah.
I think I would say the same thing, and I completely agree with your characterization of as you become more senior, it's going to take longer. And again, like we'll go back to the math to explain that. In any given company, there is a maximum of one GC role, a maximum of one CLO role. So, and it's the same thing in legal ops. There's a maximum of one head of legal operations, whether it's a manager, director, VP, whatever. There's one, right? So when you start your career, whether you're in legal or in sales or in finance or whatever, you're doing a job and you've got however many coworkers, counterparts who are doing precisely the same job. Like if you're a sales rep and you're at Oracle, you're one of whatever, 5,000. If you're a regional VP of sales at Oracle, you're one of a few hundred. If you want to be the president of worldwide sales, there's only one of those positions at Oracle. And it's the same thing with legal, whether it's on the counsel side or on the ops side. Right?
I think people get used to their job searches being quick earlier in their career, and the more experience you get, and especially I work with a lot of people who are in between jobs, and if you're in between jobs right now in this market and you're senior, it's a 6+ month search. The Wall Street Journal did a study recently. It was like earlier this month, and it was if you are a white collar worker, and they explicitly reference legal, and you are not currently working, on average it's 6 months. And to your point, like if you've been a CLO in particular at a Fortune 1000 or a publicly traded company and you're looking for a new job, there's like maybe one job on the market at a time that you could be a good fit for that 100 other qualified people are looking at. And so I feel for people who are, either on the market because they don't have another opportunity or because their search has been taking too long, because it is like soul sucking for people to just keep throwing their resume into what feels like a black hole sometimes. But you just got to keep swinging the bat. You got to lean on your network, talk to a lot of people, talk to Kevin at Brightflag, your law firm partner, Tyler, who talks to everybody on the abstract. You just got to keep having conversations with people, and it inevitably works out.
And I think your recommendation to be doing some things on the side, not just to keep sharp, but to have more to talk about is a great one, and you make some money doing it too.
How do you counsel folks around that? Because I know you've got some perspectives on standing up your own fractional practice and what that means. How would you counsel someone through that decision, actually? I'm curious. Like, should they hop on Priori and use Priori? Should they stand up a sort of like business of 2 or 3 clients on the side?
Yeah.
Does it depend on whether or not they think they want to be doing that sort of work for
Depends.
a couple years as opposed to for a few months?
It always depends. I mean, if someone's ultimate goal is to be a W-2 employee of another company and they want to do that as soon as possible, maybe you pick up some fractional work just to keep yourself busy, keep your skills sharp, but you're not going to invest the amount of time that's required to really have a go at it. And there are people who are really, really having a go at it. It's a competitive market for fractional lawyers, because there's been some amazing lawyers who have decided at all stages of their careers that this is what they want to do. They want to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They want to bill out at $250, $300 an hour, maybe higher, especially if they're sourcing their own work. Like if you're getting your work directly from a client as opposed to, look, Priori, other companies like us, we are great for helping you scale a practice, quickly connect with clients. But like clients come to us with a particular market rate in mind. Like if you can go to your friend who's the GC at a Fortune 500, they're going to pay you a higher rate. And so it's not a market that can be competed in a real way unless you're really committed to it. But you can pick up some work as a secondee through a platform for sure. But it's like totally depends on what your goals are. And so I just would want to hear about that from people before telling them they should do a particular thing.
All right. I'll take us to the last topic of conversation before fun closing questions. let's talk about the legal tech landscape and what we're seeing. Are you actually excited about AI right now? Are you worried about AI? I mean, everybody wants to ask, is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? I'm less about that debate, more that like, are you excited about what you think AI can deliver? Are you excited about using AI? Or are you sort of like a little bit more concerned and worried about it in a macro sense?
So I'm very excited about it, and I use it every day myself, every hour, I would say. You can also be worried about it.
Sure.
Right? Like, you know, the number one profession in all 50 states? Either of you know?
No. What is it?
Truck driver?
Driving for money. Number one profession in every state, right? Truck drivers, taxi drivers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, etc. Driving for your profession. So, we've been promised self-driving cars for a while now, and we're not there yet, but it's definitely coming, right? That is one example, far from legal, although I can't wait to see all of the litigation. That's a joke. But, that's one example where it's clearly coming to, AI is clearly coming to fundamentally disrupt the economy, the labor market, and like those are these fancy words that we use on a podcast to mean people's lives.
Yep.
Right? And that is scary because, at least in this country, and I would argue probably in any country, there is no idea of a plan, to say nothing of an actual plan in motion to protect the citizens who are going to be negatively impacted by this kind of technology. So I worry about it on that level, but that's a really far cry from, hey, at Brightflag, we use AI to help you better engage with law firms, right? Like, no one is losing their job because of Brightflag.
Totally.
Parts of their job that they hate are being automated. They're getting better insights. They're having better relationships with their law firms. So I don't worry about it from a professional perspective. But yeah, I use it every hour.
Do you use AI?
I do. Yeah. I don't use it to write my LinkedIn posts, for the record. I don't know.
That's why you don't get any traction anymore.
Seriously, what's going on with the algorithm? I don't think I can say anything like unique about AI. I assume our society will figure it out, maybe like on a broader level. But for me, thinking about the legal industry and the space that I'm in, I'm excited about what it can mean for alternative legal service providers. I think that if you look at something like document review, where like 15, 20 years ago, that was a really big profit center for big law firms. And now they don't do it at all. Like that's gone to the vendors. And I think that AI, with the help of AI and just the evolution of the big law firm model generally, I think a lot of work is going to be shifted away from big firms to, I think AI is going to reduce the amount of work that some firms are, like a AmLaw 20 firm probably isn't going to be doing vendor contracts in 3, 4, 5 years. Like, that is going to go to either, I don't know, a fractional lawyer who is powered by AI, who uses that technology to help with it. But I think it ultimately is good for alternative legal service provider space, because I think it's going to just shift work to a different format.
You have a prediction in your list of predictions. Kevin did a blog post, predictions for 2025.
I blogged.
You blogged. And I think you wrote it. I don't think AI wrote that for you.
I wrote it, yeah.
One of your predictions was more CLM consolidation. I think the other interesting, there's a couple interesting angles on that I want to test with the two of you. One is, probably more CLM consolidation. Two is sort of who's doing that, who's raised enough to make that happen, who's raised too much that they're too expensive to get bought. I think that's a really interesting question. Yep. Although the sort of competition antitrust constraints that might have been present the past 4 years seem to be gone. So maybe, a Salesforce, let's say, or is going to be back in the market and thinking, I don't need to worry about DOJ approval on this. But the other angle here that I'm curious for two of your thoughts on, especially with this explosion of companies that are small, have raised some venture money, have a sort of AI-focused product. A lot of these are great companies run by super smart people. There's also a lot of companies out there that are features as opposed to sort of like systems or platforms. To me, that screams at the opportunity for consolidation. Maybe not this year, but in the next few.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that in order to be acquirable, you need to have a valuation that is in line with your current. You need to have a sale price in mind that is in line with your current market value, right? And a lot of companies, again, going back to 2021, 2022, colossal amounts of money, 30, 40, 50, 100 times annual revenue, when the median software as a service company in the public markets now is trading at a little over 6x revenue, right? So you're in a situation where if you want to exit, someone is, at least one person, probably a lot of people are going to take a bath, and there's no point in doing that. So people batten down the hatches, drastically cut costs. Sometimes you can cut your way to growth. Most of the time you can't, right? Most of the time, the only way to growth is through innovation, delivering fantastic results to customers, and out-executing the competition. So my view with the CLM market, but really you could apply this philosophy to any market, is it's the vendors that have raised enough money to be able to control their own destiny, but not too much that they have placed themselves in a category where they have to get to 100 or 200 million in annual revenue in order for the math to work.
Yes.
And they are disciplined enough not to go too broad, right? Because at the end of the day, if you ask a bunch of buyers, do you want one vendor that provides a solution to everything, or do you want, the best of breed, right? And you cobble together your ideal platform. Half are going to say one, half are going to say the other, right? But the ones that say the platform, they're talking about established markets where that platform exists, and the way it got there was that vendor started by doing one thing really well. Like Salesforce started by doing CRM really well. Then they added all these other things, commerce, analytics, Slack, et cetera, et cetera. But that came so long after Salesforce had already completely dominated the core market. And what I see in CLM, for example, is too many vendors say soup to nuts, from intake to post-execution analytics and storage, we're the best at everything. And it's just not true with anybody. Right? So the most successful CLM vendors are the ones that say, you have a really high transaction volume business, and the variability from one transaction to the next, from one contract to the next, is actually pretty tight. So it's all about intake and workflow and the playbook, and that's where we're fantastic. Those are the vendors that are, I think, having the most success in that category. And so you see, DocuSign making acquisitions, Workday making acquisitions. We're going to see more of that.
Agiloft getting bought.
Agiloft, absolutely, by KKR.
The only thing that I do think that one of the opportunities, maybe for companies that have, I wouldn't say raised too much, but maybe raised too much, or are finding themselves in a position where it's hard to get acquired. I mean, private equity is an option there potentially, right? I'm not a finance person, but I mean, that seems like a reasonable outlet. So you may see more of that, is what I'm saying. You may not see one CLM buying up 3 other CLMs. Instead, you may see a private equity firm coming in, or a consortium of investors coming in and buying up.
But for sure. But here's the thing. The PE playbook is, if you're acquired by private equity for, let's say, $100, right? The PE is not writing a check for $100. That's not how it works. The PE writes a check for $30, $40, and then a bank writes the check for the rest. And then the company is levered
Totally.
right? And so the cash flow has to pay down the principal and the interest.
Yes.
Interest rates are still really high.
Yes.
So if you don't have an efficient business, it doesn't matter that there's a lot of dry powder with PEs right now, right? You've got to get to a point where you have enough free cash flow to cover the debt service, and that's where you start to go against investing in innovation, investing in customer success. So I think we're going to see a lot of activity from private equity this year across all of legal tech. I just think that it's going to be more the winners winning out as opposed to someone sort of vulturing up the less successful businesses.
That's interesting.
And to me, on the AI consolidation, we go to these conferences and just the conference floors are so crowded now with companies that I've not heard of before. I think that a lot of them don't have product market fit yet, so it's going to be hard for them to be acquired at this point. And I mean, maybe that's something that someone would take a flyer on potentially, but the ones that I talk to just don't seem like they know exactly who they should be selling to yet.
Yeah, you don't hear about as many acqui-hires as you used to.
Yeah.
That's for sure, right? You're not just paying a lot of money to bring talent into the business, even if it's super sophisticated technical talent. I think a lot of businesses are going to have that debate on some of this, is build versus buy versus find the talent outside and bring it in. And because of what you're saying and the market conditions, I think a lot of companies are going to land on, we need to find the resourcing internally to innovate ourselves, as opposed to spending, $25 million for 7 software engineers.
Yeah.
All right. Did we do this pretty well? The substantive part?
Crushed it. Let's ask Kevin about his pet peeves.
I thought of one. Not using the Oxford comma.
That's a good
Drives
one.
me crazy.
Go.
It's like...
And it's confusing, too.
It's
there is a
confusing.
reason for the Oxford comma, and it's not being pretentious.
I think we're in the minority here, though. I agree with you all.
Nah, are we in the minority?
I think we might.
Well, I mean, we might be in the minority in that we generally have good punctuation and commands of the English language, but
we write our own blog posts.
we write our own blog posts. Yeah.
All right, closing questions. Pet peeve is one of them. All right, Kevin jumped the gun on that, or you set him up. So now you got to do that
peeve,
one. Pet peeve.
Not anytime that if you're in a sales-oriented profession, not thinking about something that's going to make the client's life easier, whether it's putting availability in their time zone. By the way, this is nothing that no one on my team would ever do anything like this. But not putting something in the client's time zone, not reattaching a document if you're following up on something if you're referencing a particular thing. So for me, it's if you're in a customer service oriented profession, whether it's legal tech or whatever, I'm always thinking about the client and trying to make it easy for them to work with you.
Favorite part of your job?
I think I have to say getting to be in front of our great team and our great customers so frequently. So, being on the road constantly, it's exhausting. And I'm not old, but I'm obviously older than I used to be. That's the way it works.
That's true.
And I have started to feel the age a little bit more, but it's still the case that 99% of the time when I'm able to be, I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. I go to the office every single day that I'm in the city, every single day. Monday, Friday, doesn't matter. I'm in the office. I had to be working from home earlier this week because I was sick, and I hated it. So that's probably the best part of my job is being able to get in person with so many great people.
So I'm a recruiter at heart. That's what I like connecting people with new jobs. That's for me the best part of what I do, whether it's connecting them with a new W-2 job, a new fractional engagement. When I first interviewed at my old company, they asked me why would you want to do this? And I was like, I think it'd be kind of cool to help people find a new job because it's so important to people, obviously. And I remember after the fact, they extended me an offer, but they were like, that's kind of a cliched answer. Yeah. And I was like skeptical of my own feelings at the time, but that is over being in this space for almost 10 years. That's still my favorite part of it is working with the talent. I love our clients. I love working with legal departments. But to me, it's about helping someone find a job. That's motivating to me.
It's so odd that they would have sort of like poo-pooed that answer. Isn't that exactly what they should want to hear from someone, applying for a recruiting job?
For the record, they definitely want that to be part of it.
Yeah.
But I think that it's I don't know if you all, a lot of people are skeptical of recruiters.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical of you. Does that count?
It does. And because I think that people think that they're only in it for themselves, and of course there's like the commercial value of the thing, but like I don't know. For me, that's part of it, is being able to work with people who are looking for new jobs.
Hey, can we turn the tables on him here?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Hi, I'm Tyler Finn, and this is my classic closing question. Tyler, book recommendation.
Actually, I have two, and they are topical. A year ago, I read a book called Fire Weather about the huge fires that consumed the Canadian oil sands and the town there. Amazingly, everyone escaped the town. The whole town was burned to the ground. Fire tornadoes, like a firestorm like no one had ever seen anywhere before. And then the fire burned for like many, many weeks through the boreal forest and was seen from space. And I say that because you read that about what happened there, and then you look at some of the weather that's happening around the world, and I look specifically at like the recent fires in LA. If I'd been in LA where I used to live in my apartment, the mandatory evacuation zone was across the street. Like, so I would have left 500 feet away. You pack up your stuff and you go.
Yeah. You don't wait for the notification.
Correct. That's an amazing book. It's very well written. It's in 3 parts. I've been recommending it to people. I say read the first 2 parts. The first 2 parts are the narrative about the fire. The third part is a bunch of data on climate change. It's interesting, but it's not really the crux of what makes that book so compelling. And then the second book that I read this past weekend, because I've been wanting to read it and it seemed very apt, is called California Burning, and it was written probably almost 10 years ago, and it's basically about PG&E and the history of PG&E and what to do about the fact that we have this now very changed climate, and we have lots of utilities, and I'm sure there are other contexts for this, right? Like important infrastructure that's going to be implicated in huge disasters, and California has some unique laws that puts companies or utilities like PG&E at risk of insolvency. Other states don't have the same laws, but those 2 books, I would say, kind of bookend both what climate change might portend and make something like what happened in LA a little bit less surprising, and then raises the question of what are you supposed to do afterwards? Because clearly saying we can't have electricity, or right, you're not going to stop the winds, you're not going to stop the drought, at least for a long time.
Just a little light reading.
That was a sunny answer. I should have asked him about his biggest pet peeve.
What's your favorite Harry Potter book?
Yeah. And why is it the first one? Like,
that'll teach you to turn the question back on me.
I know. I consider myself taught.
You wanted to offer a movie recommendation instead of a book recommendation to the audience.
Did I? It's not so much that I wanted to offer a movie recommendation as that I did not have a book recommendation. Movie recommendation.
Or a podcast.
Movie recommendation. So, okay. I have not been able to actually whittle down my favorite movies to the top 5.
Okay.
I've got a top 7. But actually, now that I think about it, it's an odd continuation of your focusing on natural resources and natural disasters in the LA metro area. Chinatown is one of my favorite movies ever.
That's a great movie.
Love that movie, and I think you're not supposed to love it anymore because, Polanski got canceled.
Yeah.
But fantastic movie, and I was just thinking of watching it tonight, so I might.
Wow.
There we go.
There you go.
That good.
Yeah.
Watch it twice.
Our listeners aren't the only people being inspired by this podcast.
I think I might watch it.
Book recommendation, podcast recommendation, movie recommendation.
Kevin didn't say this, but I'm not a big reader, to be honest. I used to read more. Movie recommendation. God, I don't even. I watched American Primeval on Netflix recently.
I haven't heard. What's that one about?
It's a series, actually, so
Okay.
neither a book or a movie recommendation. But
Am I even
very
in charge
good
anymore?
Yeah, it's a western series. Highly
Cool.
recommended.
All right. The final question. Well, you were a lawyer once upon a time. Usually I frame this as, back when you were a young lawyer. But for you, Kevin, it's, back when you were getting started in business, right?
The elder statesman.
Oh, boy. I'm
So,
12 years older than this guy. How did that happen?
You don't look it.
How did that happen?
something that you know now that you wish that you'd known back then.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
There is a lot that you can do with a law degree. So I mean, for me, graduating from law school, and I really just wanted a job as a lawyer, ideally, and I didn't think about any of the other options that might be available. And I kind of just stumbled into this path that I'm on now, and thankfully I learned that, and I didn't learn it at too late, but I could have done it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think that, look, don't go to law school if you know you don't want to be a lawyer. But if you went to law school and you've been a lawyer for X amount of time, you may have to make some trade-offs, but you can do other things. And you can be on an upward trajectory doing things that you might like more. So I know there's a lot of happy lawyers, but if you're an unhappy lawyer and you want to do something else, there are options.
That's great.
I would say think outside in instead of inside out. So, for example, part of my job at Brightflag is to grow our revenue, grow our business. Nowadays, I think about it in terms of how can I make the customers successful, and if that happens, then Brightflag's success will follow. But earlier in my career, much earlier in my career, I would have said, how can I get as much revenue from this customer as possible?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That would have been my starting point. So that's a very inside-out way of thinking. I wish that I had learned the benefits of outside-in thinking even sooner than I did.
That's a great way to close.
Yeah.
Kevin, Matt, thank you so much for
Tyler.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Abstract.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks,
great.
Tyler.
And to all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.